Let's be honest, when you think of profound philosophers, you probably picture dusty old dudes with beards longer than their list of accomplishments. Well, get ready to meet the OG philosopher who threw that stereotype in a ceramic jar, and then peed on it for good measure. Diogenes of Sinope. This ancient Greek philosopher was basically the love child of Socrates, and a particularly grumpy raccoon. He lived in a jar, spent his days challenging authority, and generally made a point of being as weird as humanly possible. Now you might be thinking, why are we talking about some ancient dude who probably smelled like a public toilet? Well, because beneath the outrageous antics and questionable hygiene, Diogenes had some surprisingly relevant things to say about life, society, and the pursuit of a life less ordinary. Diogenes was a big believer in simplicity. And what's simpler than living in a giant ceramic jar? Look, I'm not saying you need to trade your apartment for a terracotta pot, but maybe Diogenes was onto something. Maybe true freedom comes from rejecting the endless cycle of buying crap we don't need, or maybe he just liked the acoustics in there. Picture this, it's broad daylight and Diogenes is wandering around with a lit lantern. When asked what the hell he's doing, he replies, "Looking for an honest man." Savage burn, Diogenes. It's funny because it's true. Finding honesty can feel as impossible as finding a decent parking spot in this city. Alexander the Great, arguably the most powerful man in the world at the time, went to go see Diogenes, who was just chilling in the sun. Alexander, feeling pretty generous, offered to grant Diogenes any wish he desired. Diogenes' response? "Yeah, you can step to the side. You're blocking my sunlight." Mic drop. Diogenes wasn't afraid to push boundaries. He ate in the marketplace, relieved himself wherever he pleased, and generally treated the world like his own personal stage. Was he being a jackass? Maybe. But he was also making a point. Societal norms are often arbitrary and deserving of a good hard poke in the eye. One day, a bunch of kids were messing with Diogenes, throwing bones at him and calling him a dog. His response? He started barking back at them. Diogenes understood that sometimes the best way to deal with idiots is to beat them at their own game. Diogenes was known as Socrates gone mad. He took Socrates' teachings on self-examination and living a virtuous life to their absolute extreme. Imagine a philosophy professor who actually lives by his own teachings, no matter how weird or inconvenient they might be. Plato, that other famous philosopher dude, once defined a human as a featherless biped. Diogenes, never one to miss an opportunity for a sick burn, responded by plucking a chicken and throwing it at Plato's feet. The lesson? Don't be afraid to question everything, even the smartest people in the room. Diogenes once observed that people would gladly give money to beggars but not to philosophers. His point? Society often values superficial displays of wealth and status over genuine wisdom and insight. Imagine this. You're at a fancy banquet, surrounded by people stuffing their faces with extravagant dishes. Then Diogenes shows up with his own simple meal, completely unfazed by the gluttony around him. He knew that true satisfaction comes from within, not from material possessions or social status. One day Diogenes saw a child drinking water from their hands. Instead of scoffing at the child's lack of manners, Diogenes threw away his own cup, realizing that even the simplest act could be a lesson in humility. Diogenes didn't believe in the concept of private property. He slept in the marketplace, proving that home is truly where you make it, even if that place smells like day-old fish and questionable life choices. Diogenes believed that money was the root of all evil. To prove his point, he started defacing coins. It's like graffiti, but with a philosophical message. Diogenes was a big fan of going au naturel. He believed that clothing was just another way for people to hide their true selves. Now, I'm not saying you should ditch your pants and embrace your inner exhibitionist, but maybe Diogenes was onto something. Maybe true freedom means being comfortable in your own skin, no matter what society says. When asked where to find an honest man, Diogenes pointed to a public bathroom. His point? Even in the most private of places, true honesty is hard to come by. Diogenes was known to enjoy a stiff drink in the morning. When questioned about his unconventional drinking habits, he replied that he preferred to avoid being drunk in the evening. The takeaway? Sometimes you gotta make your own rules. Diogenes often referred to himself as a dog. He admired their honesty, their lack of pretense, and their ability to live in the moment. In a world obsessed with status and appearances, maybe, just maybe, we could all learn a thing or two from our furry friends. Diogenes wasn't afraid to challenge even the most respected figures of his time. He would often interrupt Plato's lectures with witty retorts and philosophical jabs. It's like heckling, but with more intellectual rigor. Diogenes had a unique way of dealing with critics. He would often urinate on them. His message was clear. Don't let the haters get you down, just pee on them and move on. Diogenes believed in living simply and sustainably. He often scavenged for food in the garbage, proving that one man's trash is another philosopher's treasure. Diogenes was known for his signature gesture, thumbing his nose at social conventions. It was his way of saying, "I don't conform to your rules, I make my own." Diogenes wasn't content to keep his philosophy confined to stuffy classrooms. He took his teachings to the streets, engaging with everyday people in lively debates and philosophical discussions. He believed that philosophy should be accessible to everyone, not just the intellectual elite. One day, Diogenes decided to visit a gymnasium. Naturally, he showed up completely naked. His point? Society's obsession with physical appearance is absurd. True strength comes from within. Diogenes had zero tolerance for hypocrisy. When he encountered someone who preached one thing but practiced another, he wouldn't hesitate to call them out, sometimes literally spitting in their face. It was his way of saying, don't be a phony, live your truth, even if it's ugly. Diogenes believed that true fulfillment came from living a virtuous life, not from chasing fame or fortune. He saw how easily power corrupted and how quickly fame faded. His message was clear: focus on what truly matters: character, integrity, and wisdom. When offered a luxurious mansion, Diogenes refused, claiming that his humble barrel provided him with all the shelter he needed. He understood that true happiness comes from appreciating what you have, not from accumulating more stuff. Diogenes had an interesting way of telling time. He would lie down in the marketplace and use his body as a human sundial. It was his way of reminding people to slow down, be present, and appreciate the simple things in life. In another act of shocking social commentary, Diogenes publicly masturbated. While definitely NSFW, his actions were intended to challenge societal norms around sexuality, shame, and the hypocrisy of public decency. Diogenes had a particular disdain for corrupt politicians. He compared them to fleas, feasting on the blood of the people they were supposed to serve. His message was clear: true leadership requires integrity, compassion, and a genuine desire to serve the common good. Legend has it that Diogenes' final wish was to be thrown to the dogs after he died. It was a fitting end for a man who lived his life on his own terms, challenging conventions and embracing his inner canine. So, what can we learn from this ancient Greek philosopher who lived in a jar and peed on people? A lot, actually. Diogenes teaches us to question everything, challenge authority, and live authentically, even if it means being a little weird. Diogenes may have lived over 2,000 years ago, but his message is timeless. He reminds us that true happiness comes from within, not from material possessions or social status. He encourages us to live simply, think critically, and be true to ourselves no matter the cost. It's easy to dismiss Diogenes as a crazy old man who liked to shock people. But beneath the outrageous antics was a profound message about what it means to be human. He challenges us to examine our own lives, our values, and our place in the world. So go forth, my friends, and channel your inner Diogenes. Question everything, challenge the status quo, and never be afraid to be yourself, even if it means living in a jar and peeing on people.